Okay, so tonight we're discussing the hour-long video that some of us may have watched from Joe Bosco. And Joe Bosco's got quite a reputation within the industry, and he's working with, I believe he's working with Jason Day on some of the mental stuff. So that's really interesting, and obviously this has had a great effect on him. So I thought I'd start something that is very familiar to us. And in actual fact, everything that Joe talks about on the tape, called Unique and Revolutionary by the Geek, we already cover in some way, shape or form. And I certainly want to, for you guys, I definitely want you to be aware of where our parallels are and where our parallels sit. But I think that Joe is definitely worth a look. He's got a book called Real Golf. That is downloadable on Kindle for free, so that, or a shortened version of it, and you can also get a hard copy. He also recommends Fluid Motion Factor, which is available on Amazon. And I think the main reason that he's actually on this in this hour is actually to promote the focus band. So again, we need to look at the focus band, and the focus band is this measuring device for the brain's activity and whether we've shifted into the right brain, the creative area where we want to be, rather than left brain, logical and analytical, where the thoughts come up and the emotions and so on and so forth. I will give you his, I might as well give you his details. So you can go to joeboscogolf.com, that's his website. You can email him at joeboscogolf@gmail.com, and he's quite happy to receive your phone calls on America, obviously, 001-847-826-0045. Now I think that the main factor, that there's two main factors in there, that golf should be conducted on the golf course, and that includes the original assessments, and all work and all practice relatively should be done on the course. Because as we know, as Charles Seashore told us 15 years ago, that learning is contextual. So, you know, we took this advice a long time ago and reshaped our whole training and our whole certification around what was given to us outside of golf, because it just made sense. We're in agreement on a lot of things, and I don't want you to think that this tape isn't worth watching, because it is, because I definitely picked up a couple of things from it that surprised me, that appealed to me, and that will also run in conjunction with some of the other suggestions that we make. So the main factor is, and he calls it, routine is king. So this is something that we are well aware of, and we're getting deeper and deeper into, and how we build these routines to create certain states. So again, he talks about some ideal states for play, and one of the aspects is what he calls the motions, the state of motion. Now, I don't quite know how that's spelled, but I think it's very akin to the theta brainwave state. So this is slightly almost hypnotic states where things happen quite magically. It could be described, I suppose, as some people, by being in the zone, and he definitely describes this place as being, you know, not too high, not too low. He talks and suggests that, exactly as we do, that the routine is there to bring you into these states. He doesn't ever suggest, however, that routine is the game. He just said routine is king. And you know, he says one factor, that the golf shot takes 1/20th of the routine. So we would be, I think, silly not to look at all the aspects of the 19 out of 20 and to enjoy those things rather than be dependent upon the outcome of that swing. So, you know, what I'm suggesting, I've suggested for a long while, that routine is the game of golf, and if you don't enjoy routine, if you don't give to routine, if you don't invest in routine, then you're missing 19 out of 20 parts of the game of golf. He talks about when you hit a shot, saying whatever happens to it, good or bad, that's fascinating. If we're going back to we want it to be not too high, not too low, I can see where fascinating is there, but I still think it's getting too high, because fascinating in itself is fascinating. So I think interesting, still I would stick with that. I would use fascination in other terminologies, but I think, yeah, each shot is just interesting in itself. I think that when you're trying to use this verbiage correctly, then you must make that word fit into the bill of not too high, not too low. He talks about the three ball, better ball scramble, and this is very much along the lines, I thought, of what Kendall was talking about last week, in where he had the NFL guys, one pulling the other on a bungee cord, an elasticated bungee cord. So basically, one had an extra weight they were trying to pull against, and the other one had this assistance of the bungee pulling it. So it's kind of like the same idea, that what that was about was training the one that was getting pulled, the unconscious, to know that it could go quicker than it actually does. And I've got there's a few other things that I've done in the past with examples of turning round, and how when your body is capable of a lot more than you think, which was about the speed sticks that we talked about last week. So what he's saying is that when we use, as we've advocated, the three ball better ball scramble, then we find our true potential. But we also discover that there's different ways of getting the ball to the hole. We get this opportunity to see how shots are going to play in the wind. Now, interestingly, and I thought this was really interesting, he stated that in the majority of cases, and he didn't get too specific on that, with the three balls, most people went with the best shot. Now, he suggested that this was because the psychological understanding that we had two balls left to go, and therefore we swung a little freer. We swung how we could swing, because there was no pressure on us. So then, what he didn't do then was bring the three ball worst ball scramble into effect, because again, last week was all about putting constraint-led learning, and putting the constraints of the three ball worst ball scramble in gives you that pressure condition. But when you go to the golf course, because you've only got to hit one ball, it's so much easier. So I was really shocked that he looked at and discovered the advantage of the three ball better ball, but actually hadn't looked at all the advantages of the three ball worst ball, and working the two in harmony together, working at both ends of the spectrum. So I'm definitely going to talk to Joe, and I'm definitely going to bring that up and see whether I get some opinions from him and what he thinks and how that would work. And obviously I've been working with both three ball better ball and worst ball scramble with my tour players and satellite tour players for a long while. Again, it releases that autonomy. It gives the player the ability to discover for themselves. Now, I would say that discovery for themselves, that autonomy, would still be greater if the coach is there getting them to see things that they still might not see in those situations. So, you know, please take the trouble of going out with your players as they do the three ball better ball scramble and three ball worst ball scramble, and see what you can learn from that. Now, I think the thing that I learned most was about the eyes. So basically, this is huge within the imagery part of the pre-shot routine. And what he's basically saying is that we should feel the intent, think about what we're going to do before we actually look. So there was a lot of psychological reasons in there for that, and that's why I really need you to go back and watch what he states, because I'm not going to go into detail in that because I haven't got the expertise to. But what he's basically saying is that we get it fixed in our brain and our body first before we then use our eyes. Another very interesting thing about the eyes was, and TOG talked about this, rather than this up, down, up, down, up, down look, it's this long stare kind of thing. Well, what we want to be able to do is actually create a state out of that. So once we decide to fix on the target, it's about those eyes being quiet, all around those eyes being relaxed, and give them time to focus in on what it is that they're looking at or what they're trying to do. Now, these states that he talks about can be arrived at through certainly through meditation. Meditation, again, is a very, very key area for getting into these prime states, to give over to the right brain, to give over to everything that Tim Galway's ever said, Fred Schumacher's ever said, Bob Ratella's ever said. And so it's about how we get ourselves into this state. Now, he goes into how the focus band then measures these brain waves, measures the brain's activity, measures whether we're left brain or right brain orientated. But again, I'll take you back to the core state. So core state is everything that the focus band is. You know, I'm not saying the focus band couldn't be a useful product, but core state and then anchoring that core state will give you the awareness that you want, will give you that state that you're after. And we've already got it in our toolbox, and it's going to cost us nothing. Again, I've spoken to the focus band people, and we may look into the product, we may have it as a tool, but certainly none of you need to worry about it. You can create these states through materials and information that we've already given you. So for me, just worth every second of that hour watching it, if only to verify what you're doing in your training is revolutionary. Everything that he said, nobody's doing except him. We are training people to do it from the start. We're training people in the realities of how we need to look at people from the golf course. First, on the golf course. What are they doing on the golf course? And then doing the work on the golf course. And if you then keep this running, you have to do something like the Free Lessons for Life program, because you have to spend substantial amounts of time on the course with your client, and you've got to be able to price that in a way that you get a return on your investment. Remember, these guys that we're seeing on these science lab tapes, most of them are working with the upper echelon. They're working with people that will pay the massive amount of money to be on the course with them. That they'll have their own focus band. They'll have their own machinery. So you know, it's important to understand that we've got to find clients that want the same sort of service as this, that will then give us the ability to give them the rewards that's available by working on the course, by being on the course, for swing change, for pre-shot routine, and even teaching pre-shot routine. You know, we're really going to have to get very well trained at looking at what pre-shot routine demands. It's probably the most important part of your training, understanding that pre-shot routine and getting on with it. So I don't think that there's anything else that I want to say at this moment. So I'm happy to open up to the floor with any questions. Those people that have watched it, because I know quite a few people have watched it, then I'd really like your feedback for the tape. So Marcel, as usual, we'll kick off with you. Yeah. Good. Yeah, so the point, it shouldn't happen, because all we're doing is training the body at an unconscious level to move faster, not at a conscious level. So it kind of like will find, it doesn't know that it can swing faster and keep everything still correct. It doesn't know, because it's been used to doing it at a speed. So it's kidology for sure. We're kidding the unconscious brain into what it can do, which is exactly what the 3-ball, better ball scramble does. It kids the brain into thinking, well, yeah, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I have skills beyond what I'm doing because I'm holding myself back with left brain thoughts. So we're trying to do two things. We're trying to tell the unconscious brain at a level that it can actually perform much better than it actually is, but then we're also trying to train that state for it to occur. And that's where the focus band comes in, making sure you stay in right brain, stay in creative, and don't go into those left brain thoughts. So there's two things going on there.
What I notice personally in my fittings, that very often I tell a golfer, just swing it a little slower, at least in your backswing. Go slower in your backswing, and then they suddenly make a much better swing. So if you slow it down, I know it works because I see it all the time. But speeding up, it might mess up because your body doesn't have the time to do everything in sequence that it needs to do.
Well, again, what we've got is several things going on there. So we're really going back a little bit on last week, which is fine. So Kendall talked about the authentic swing. So what he's basically saying is that a lot of us are making movements that we've learned, and those are incorrect, and we've learned them with the right procedure set in place. So we haven't looked at what the challenge is. We haven't looked at what the cause and effect is, so we haven't even chosen the right thing. We're just appealing to somebody's idea of how it should be, and then we've confused their brain. So look, first thing, when you do the fast swings, it doesn't mean that the backswing's fast. You could still stick with that same rhythmical backswing. All we're getting them to do is to hit it 2, 3, 4, 5 times faster on the downswing, so that will be fed back in. Now, what you'll find is that outside of violently incorrect anatomical movements, it will work. So if there are poor, very poor movements in the anatomy, so in other words, if we come massively out of our spine and we go towards the ball, then all we're probably going to do is injure ourselves. So I would put a slight proviso on this, in that the anatomy has to be moving reasonably correctly in the first place for there to be a functional result. But You know, I remember back to the incident I've told you about before, when I did some inner game work with a guy out in Portugal who basically had had 12 coaches while he was on the Dutch course, and literally was missing it, topping it, shanking it. I saw him try and hit 100 balls and not one did he connect with. And what I did was exactly what Kendall did. I got him to swing faster, not slower. I got him to faster because his brain was getting in the way. I got him to swing at phenomenal speeds, and then when he was catching the ground at the right place, then I put the ball down, then he hit the ball, and then he burst out to crying because he just hit his 7-iron 180 yards straight out the middle and saw this thing happen that had never happened before. Because we got to his authentic swing, we got rid of the left brain stuff going on in the same hit. Now, I can't honestly tell you whether the backswing was slower or faster, but I can tell you that it was done without thought. So I think it's exploring really what we are capable of when we're not worried about outcome. And the same experience that you had when we were at Blake's, the Miracle at Blake's. You didn't know what to expect, you didn't have any thoughts, you just stepped up, hit the ball, and it just flew, didn't it? It's the same thing. It's tapping in to, you know, what we state day in, day out, that the client has all of the resources and they don't really need anything from us. But we do need to guide them to it. We do need to have the education that and the information that's within the Joe Bosco stuff that, you know, virtually, you know, apart from the eyes thing, is already in our training, has been in our training for 15 years. You know, so they're way behind us. It's just that, yeah, I should have written a book on it really, but there you go. I'll catch up. Keith, questions? Or anybody? Open floor. Observations then, Keith?
Well, I think that the interesting one was that three-ball scramble.
Yeah.
I always talked about the worst ball and making it more difficult. And I never thought about doing it on as a better ball scenario.
Yeah, and look, and that's, again, it may be because I've only used it on the tour players. So basically why I had to use it on the tour players, obviously one of the things that happened when they did the 3-ball worst ball scramble, sure, it sharpened them up, but also then I had to pick up their confidence, but also what I wanted to do was improve their strategies. So they'd have the scope to do different shots they wouldn't normally try, to see what they could do. They had a chance to change club, they had a chance to see where the wind went. So that's why I gave it to them, because they could really do something with it. I have to say, yeah, I didn't really see some of the advantages of giving it to our the normal golfers. The other thing, obviously, is that my ability to give it to the tour players is based on the fact that, you know, they could get 9 holes on their own. You know, they're playing golf all day long during the day. It's a little bit harder for the normal golfer. And again, what Joe said was really smart. He said, well, you know, if you can't do it for 9, just do it for 3. He was saying do it once a week. Well, I was telling my players they had to do it every day, you know, to keep that stretch going and going and going. So yeah, thanks for that, Keith, that's great.
Yeah, but it's interesting, I had actually encouraged some of my players to play a shorter golf course.
Yeah.
To get into the habit of shooting low scores.
Yeah.
So they got used to shooting low scores, and then at some point in the future when they do get around going, they're not frightened about operating in uncharted territory because they're in the habit of shooting low scores sometimes.
Yeah, and you know,
the 3-ball better ball could come in as well.
Yeah, I spent a lot of the last 3 years, you know, on a par 3 course playing that a lot, and I would say exactly that happens. You know, I'm getting, you know, used to shooting in the 20s, and it's, yeah, it does, it really does, it works like that. You know, I was doing that a lot to build up the number of holes in one that I've had for the book, but you know, because I wanted to stand up on every shot and have the opportunity of a hole in one, 9 holes on the trot, 18, 27 on the trot, you know, so, but it's the same thing, you know, yeah, I agree, there's no two ways about it, it works, and he certainly reminded me of the real psychological benefits of that. Ron, what was interesting about it for you?
A few things really. Firstly, sort of after listening to it, thinking to myself, how many examples of this do we see in normal in life outside of golf? And you know, the first sportsman that I can think of that seems to employ this.
Keep your volume up.
Either the same or a very similar mental position he puts himself in. You can see him. You can see his eyes train to his target before he's doing anything, and then it's almost like a cue to the body to say, "I've done the thinking. I've done the visualization. I'm now going to everything aside, and I'm going to let my body work in a way that is natural and neutral."
Well, what Joe Bosco will say is that he's actually one step better than that. He's already thinking that experience before he looks. So he's working out what he wants to do and how he wants to move before he looks. Then he looks, and then he moves into the motion state and allows it to happen, which he does brilliantly.
You see, Owen Farrell stare at the ball for a long time before his head starts to go towards the posts, and then as he repeats it,
Yeah.
and then the body goes. Another point he made about sort of learning things contextually. You know, you learn to drive on the road with consequences. You don't learn to drive on a driving simulator and build up the same awareness that you would need from the road. So he's saying with his 3-ball better ball, get out there and practice.
It's not his 3-ball better ball. Yeah.
Getting out there and making sure that you're not scared of the consequence. You know, hesitant drivers are just as dangerous as speeding drivers, because if you're focused too much on a consequence, you cannot give your body, your mind enough time to get into the real sort of fluid motion and fluid thoughts. You need to do something well. You need to be able to do something well without thinking about it. You know, you said about speeding up the swing. It's not the speeding up of someone's swing that makes bad shots. It's the thinking of the speeding up of the swing that does it.
Well, it will mostly be blackout. So look, nothing's changed here. We still want complete awareness while we swing the golf club. In fact, Ben Doyle says it on my map here. Remember, your attention span must be as long as your golf swing. So everything that is happening here is to get the state where you can focus in on your golf swing for the length of the swing. And then that gives us the ability to do feedback and all sorts of other things from that particular place. So yeah, really, really good, Ron. Good observations, and yeah, brilliant.
One other thing that I'm not sure whether that did come up. Do you remember those pictures that went around? If you stared at them enough, for long enough, they turn into something else.
Yeah. Yes.
to see. Now that's something. That's the desired result of the band that they were wearing tonight, was to harness the the open side of your mind.
Yeah.
That's a sort of, those pictures are a very clear and quick example as to what happens when you focus too much. You try to find that image on the page and you can't find it. It's when you can let go and then your mind just finds it, and because you're not forcing it or letting yourself open these things. Now that was just a thought that maybe that's one of those sort of visual examples of a mental state.
Yeah, and Ron, I think that, you know, having these parallels and being able to explain these parallels to your client is so useful. So again, I like the creativity that you're adopting there. And you know, we've used the car one again and again and again for learning and all sorts of things. But yeah, it's all in the same place, isn't it? It's all in the same place. The thing here, you know, the big thing that we need to adopt is, this is the style in which we need to coach, because it's the style that works. So, you know, we've got to use this style, and we've got to create a brand that says this is what we do, because this is the way. The other way is not the way.
Look, the last thing I want to say is, people will be better for it. Okay, people may not want to spend the money on a course with you being with them. With my situation and my simulator lounge, I'm already sort of running away with it thinking, well, I've got a course in the room already. So if we pull up a golf course and give them 3 balls to go round with, we're giving them a virtual option to play that same 3-ball vertical round of the balls, but you can condense it into an hour's lesson.
Yeah, look, Ron, you've got to adapt your business model however and the best you can. But it's not as good as being out on the golf course.
No.
And it never can be. And
No.
it will never be, you know, the main place for your simulator is from October through till April. That's when you use that. And then, you know, eventually adapt and go out to the golf course, because your clients will never evolve to their full potential unless you get them out on the course. They'll never get to where they could go. So you've got your business model. Your business model works. You just have to adapt it.
Yeah, and I'm not in any way saying that I'm going to be looking to replace the real thing with something that's not real, because I know that's not.
Well, you haven't got the consequence, like you said, have you? You haven't got the ultimate consequence, because they can't lose a ball.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
But whereas, you know, sort of practicing on the driving range where people hit ball after ball after ball without an aim, without a even less consequence, because out of 50 balls, you know, they're not really that much. 10, 15 go flying away. You just gives them one step closer to having a real consequence.
Look, again, let me take you back. The main thing, the main obstacle of people getting better is that their practice isn't managed. That's the real problem. I don't care whether you're the Joe Daniels, the most intelligent anatomical expert in the world. If that practice isn't managed, they won't get better. So you have to manage that practice. You have to manage the play and manage the practice. And that's where us as golf coaches have to be prepared to be different. So you can pre-shot routines till they're coming out your head in the studio, can't you? I mean, because you've got no distractions, you've got all the time in the world, you haven't got to walk between holes, so you know you've got to take all of the advantages and stack them up, but remember that still you're going to have to do some work on the golf course.
Definitely. There is, like you said, there is no replacement for real situations. You have to be in the real to learn how to deal with things. So I do totally agree. There is no replacement for real life.
Right, anybody else got any questions or any observations to make?
Just one thing, Peter. Just going back to what you were discussing earlier on around about the perfect, or should I say, the image that you need to create when you play the shot. I'd just like to go back sometime, probably around about 2004, when we did the course, and we actually had a situation where you actually developed a guy from hitting a ball right-handed to hitting a ball left-handed just by visual imagery. How can getting into that condition, but it was a visual imagery which proved to be that you can.
Yeah, that was it. Well, remember, we did take them into hypnosis first, and so I got them to work in the theta brainwave. So I was in that motion place. So I created the theta brainwave that allowed them to let their unconscious take over. And remember, they had no experience of doing it left-handed, so they hadn't got anything to compare it with. So they couldn't go left brain because they had nothing to compare it with. They didn't have a good swing or a bad swing. So there was lots of advantages to what we did. But yeah, I mean, it was miraculous. Near enough. I mean, you know, 1 in 10 times, you know, I got people to hit their first ever shot left-handed 150 yards and hit the 5 on the 150-yard sign. I mean, that's pretty frigging amazing. So we can, again, we see what potential is in that area, can't we, Paul?
Yeah, massive amount. Just going back to what you were saying about the three-ball Texas scramble, I actually experimented with it this afternoon, playing 9 holes on a par 3 fountain, and it just changes your game completely because it gives you that opportunity to experiment, like you said, experiment with your shots that you possibly wouldn't play on a regular basis if you are getting the opportunity to use them.
And look, so when we do this, again, it's very important that we don't get involved in outcome either. So we're working at an unconscious level to show our unconscious what it's capable of, but we also want to use that as to train our reaction, and also to become aware of the freedom in our swing, aware of the states, aware of our unconscious movement. So we have to, you know, for me, getting core state, getting it anchored, and then set that anchor off before you do this is probably the most important thing that you can do without attaching the focus band. And remember, you can't use the focus band on the golf course. You can only use it in practice, whereas we can use the anchored core state in the peak of competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that band does is give you a visual note as to when you are in your core state and when you're not in your core state. It gives you no help getting there. It just tells you green or red.
Well, again, what he's saying is that the meditation exercises, the breathing exercises, they will help you get into that place, for sure.
That's stuff that, from the sounds of it, you've been doing for a long time.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we started the breathing a long way, then we came across heart math, and heart math gave us some sort of measurement of what happens when we get into that 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, that place, how that all comes about. Core state gave it to me 5 times better because it connected everything. It connected mind, body and soul. It connected all of my feelings. you know, I could sense so much more in core state than in any other place. But yes, I agree with you. It just measures it. But then, you know, that's really all that, you know, TrackMan does. It's just measuring what you're doing. And it's a place then that you can say, well, I was here and now I'm here. And of course, that's what's happened to Jason Day. He's in a much better place for that performance. Yeah.
Yeah, heart math is just really emotional control, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was done through the breathing. And again, I think you'll find that in the free Kindle download, then Joe's put some exercises in there for you to use. I will go through all those exercises, and when I speak to Joe, I'll ask him whether there's anything new on the market as well. Okay, well, again, I enjoyed this whole experience, a bit egotistically, I suppose, because, you know, I was so pleased that, you know, what some people are calling, you know, the revolution, it's happened already with us. It happened a long while ago, and it's now up to us, and each and every one of us, to not go back to old methods, to not fail in our responsibilities,